Looking at applying transfers to our models today on Quick Tips. Hi there, Chris here with another quick tip for you all. In this video, we are going to take a look at applying transfers to our models, and for this example, we're going to look at applying Bretonnian transfers to Bretonnian shields, as it were. So you can see here, I've already got a shield prepared and ready to go. I've applied the paint fairly heavily, as typically a lot of people tend to do that on their models. I'm going to use the brand new Bretonnian transfer sheet to apply. I'm just going to grab one of the uppermost portions of the transfer sheet. I'm going to grab one of the little axe symbols, and we are going to apply that to the model surface. I'm going to use some tweezers here to keep a firm grip on the transfer. I've got a little dish here with a little shallow amount of water. Nothing in the water, is straight up water out of the tap, and we begin submerging the transfer in the water. A few moments later, as the image would suggest, we can see that the transfer is falling off the sheet, and we're going to be very careful there. And of course, really quickly here, we just take the transfer. We have a shade wash brush just to help us. I like using the shade wash brush just as a kind of a regular kind of utility type of brush, just to get jobs done when I need something to be a little bit gentle but also hold a lot of liquid and what have yous. So once we apply the transfer, you can see here I'm using a fairly generous amount of water to help move the transfer into its final position. And once I'm satisfied with where it is, I quickly squeegee off the water and allow the transfer to dry. Now this is the most straightforward way of applying transfers. And in this example, you can see here how the transfer is still quite shiny, even though the background is matte. The paint is quite heavy, and that can actually pose some problems. Now, if your paint is really heavy and you're applying the transfer straight onto the surface, that can be a bit of a problem because air can get up under the transfer and it can make the transfer fall off. If you ever see any like an air bubble behind the transfer, or after a while without sealing anything like that, the transfer can come right off if anybody's ever had that happen to them. So in this next example, we're going to go through the very typical way in which I apply transfers. So here I have the old world Bretonnian transfer sheet. I'm going to use one of those Bretonnian axes. They come supplied with a whack ton. I'm going to use my little shallow dish here. I'm going to use some tweezers. This is just a quick run through of tools that we'll be using. Also an X-Acto blade to cut the transfer free. This is a little bit backwards from the earlier example, but this is pretty much how I go about it. And you will also notice that there was white vinegar, and I often will use that to help soften the transfer before applying it. That's what that was for. So anybody who's wondering what that white vinegar was about. Very carefully here, I separate the transfer from the main paper, and very carefully I cut away and around the image. And when you look at the transfer, you'll see that there is this little clear barrier around it. So with the dish, I'm going to fill it up with some water, just regular water, and with a cap full of vinegar, I'm going to put that in there and give it a quick little mix just to mix it around. Now the whole point of the vinegar is that it's acidic, and it helps loosen the transfer, and it helps soften the image itself, the little plastic layer that is there, and that's microscopically thin, and it doesn't take much to get that to separate and get nice and soft. And here you can see the transfers moving around on the paper. So really quickly here, what I do is with my large shade wash brush, I wet the surface. Now you'll notice that I didn't do that in the previous example, and it worked just fine, but here I find that this is the best way to go about it, because when the transfer is sitting on the surface and is dry, it can tend to stick and make this next phase kind of tricky. It didn't happen in the previous example, but this is typically why I wet the surface before applying the transfer. And without having too much water on the surface, you can see it's pooling up a little bit, and you just use that water to help you move that transfer. You dry the brush off really quickly, and you siphon off the water off the surface, and then very carefully you squeegee out and apply a little bit of pressure as you massage the transfer on that surface. I know it sounds a little funny and a little odd, but this is one of the best ways. Now you can see here how the transfer is sitting on that surface nice and smooth. I'm going to use some Walther's Solvaset. This is decal setting solution. This is my favorite product to use in this instance. There are other products that do a similar thing. It has a little brush automatically in the little jar, and you can see here I applied a very generous amount onto the surface very carefully. Do not move the transfer around with that brush, even if you feel like it's not quite out of place. Now you can see here how the transfer is fairly matte, and that's because of all the different products we've used to make this transfer adhere to this surface really, really well. I'm going to use Lamy and Medium to get a nice matte finish for everybody else out there. And again, this is typically what I do. Now, another way I could also go about with this final step as well is apply a gloss layer and then apply a matte layer to smooth that all out and everything like that. But that is applying transfer. This is the typical way in which I apply transfers, and if you follow these steps, you should not have any problems when you apply your transfers and get those things looking just spectacular on your surface. And again, a huge thank you to everybody for watching these. Big thank you to my patrons. Big thank you to the members here on the YouTube. Big thank yous to you all. And yeah, be sure to leave comments down below what you would like to see covered in this series of quick tips, because this series is all about helping you guys take care of your brushes. They'll take care of you, and I will see you again.